kids remind me what is at stake in this election, and they also provide me with a lot of comedic material. They have been volunteering in their own way for this campaign for governor. My kids went back to school a couple weeks ago, like many of your kids and grandkids, and much to my wife's delight, and partially to mine. But my daughter Coco, my middle daughter, she didn't tell her mom or myself, but she decided to pack up her backpack for school for the first day of first grade with all of Dad's buttons and bumper stickers. And when I went to fill her backpack with a snack, I got a little choked up, and I had to tell her on the way to school, I had to say, Coco, some of these kids in first grade may be a little bit more excited than others to get these buttons and bumper stickers, but make sure you pass them out with joy in your heart and a smile on your face. My youngest daughter, Olivia, who's 4, she's been volunteering for different campaign events because she knows that if she hangs out with Dad at enough campaign events, there's usually candy lying around, and that is enough compensation for her. And my son, who's 10, he spent a lot of his summer going around with Dad to different meet and greets and Rotary clubs and various other places, and he's been an enthusiastic contributor to the campaign as well. He has a little different take on his efforts. I was discussing the campaign with him a couple weeks ago, and he turned to me and he said, Dad, you know all the work that I've done on the campaign? I said, yeah, it's been awesome, Craig. I really appreciate it. He said, I was thinking about it. How much are you going to pay me? And that immediately, as a dad, kind of bummed me out because I thought it would be great if he was doing this to defend his old man's honor and for his family's honor in a larger context. But then I took a different take on it. I said, I guess my wife and I have raised this kid well as a capitalist, and he recognizes that there's value to his work, and he wants to be duly compensated for it. And so I said, really, you want to be paid? He said, yeah, cold hard cash, Dad. And I said, no, I'm not going to do cold hard cash, but what I will do is I'll give you some money to spend at this place in Denver called Bill's Sports Cards Collectibles. He is 10 years old, obsessed with baseball, collects baseball cards and random baseball memorabilia that you never thought you'd need. And this place has all sorts of random baseball memorabilia, very subjective pricing. And I take him there about once a month. So we were driving down to the baseball card shop, and I used it as a learning experience. I said, here's the thing, Craig. If Dad wins this really important election for Colorado's future, you get to keep the money and spend it on baseball cards as you'd like. But if Dad's opponent wins, you may have to redistribute the money to your 2 younger sisters. And beyond that, you might have to redistribute it to the Colorado public at large. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, that really stinks. And I said, yes, it does. And then a couple days later, he was talking to one of his younger sisters, Coco, the 7-year-old, and he said, I was taking him out to breakfast because it was a small thing that I could contribute on the weekends. And I heard him talking to Coco, and he said, Coco, do you realize that Jared Polis wants to tax kids? And he said, do you know what that means? It means that the price of bubblegum and Barbies is going up. And I thought we should have recorded this because it would be the perfect commercial. But he's right. He's on to something. And what he is on to is that the economic future of Colorado is at stake in this election like never before. I want to make sure that we pass on a prosperous Colorado where people are excited to move to our great state. And they're moving here by the thousands from the East Coast and the West Coast because New York and California are broken. And young people recognize it. I want to make sure that I pass on a prosperous Colorado, not only to my kids, but to your kids as well, and to your grandkids, and to the future generations of this state, that we want to have a Colorado for them where they can thrive and recognize all of their goals and dreams. We can fix our crumbling infrastructure over the long term in Colorado. We can provide more attainable housing for young people that are moving here, not just in the metro area. I use the word attainable because what is affordable for somebody in the metro area may not be attainable for somebody in Grand Junction or down in Pueblo. And we have to fix housing, and we have to fix our roads if we are going to have the economic development that all of us want for the future in Colorado. I believe passionately that we can make healthcare more affordable and solving these challenges if we elect somebody like Congressman Polis. Congressman Polis, and I have said it over and over again, and I will say it over and over again over the critical next 3 weeks, represents the most radical, extreme candidate that Colorado has ever nominated to be a gubernatorial candidate. I was at a forum with him yesterday, and he was saying, you know, I've been bipartisan. I said, during the last Congress, you voted with Nancy Pelosi 94% of the time. Colorado desperately needs a governor who's more than 6% bipartisan, Congressman. Colorado needs a governor that hasn't voted for every single tax increase under the sun. Colorado needs a governor that didn't vote in the minority of his own party against the Military Defense Reauthorization Act named after John McCain, which had a negative $7 billion impact to Colorado Springs alone, where we have Fort Carson, which was the first pay increase for troops in a decade. Jared Polis voted in the minority of his own party against it. This is a guy who is completely out of the mainstream. So far out of the mainstream that he is now proposing a state-run healthcare system that I was the co-chair of the effort to defeat with Governor Ritter less than 2 years ago. We combined across party lines, former Democratic governor and myself, to defeat state-run healthcare because we knew that the cost associated with the state-run system would bankrupt Colorado and send businesses fleeing the state by the thousands and send thousands upon thousands of jobs out of Colorado. 2 years later, and Governor Hickenlooper, by the way, supported us. 2 years later, Jared Polis is trying to bring a more expensive version of state-run healthcare back to Colorado. It's why he sponsored the federal Medicare for All Act in the Congress, which the cost of that was approximately $32 trillion. So I asked him, I said, are we meant to divide $32 trillion by 50? That would be the associated cost to Colorado. What this will do is result in longer lines for the people that can least afford it. It will result in ration care. It will result in less doctors in rural areas like right here in the mountains and in western Colorado, and it will result in even lower payments to doctors and nurses and physicians' assistants. That is not the Colorado that I want for my kids. That is not a compassionate healthcare system. It is a cruel healthcare system. And it's a healthcare system, by the way, that Jared Polis can opt out of. You know why? Because when Jared Polis voted in Congress to support the Affordable Care Act, a few weeks later, he started up a company for medical tourism that he was the lead investor in and the managing member of, so that rich people could opt out of a state-run, one-size-fits-all healthcare system. That is Jared Polis in a nutshell. One size fits all for everybody else, from healthcare to energy, but not for him. Not for him. He can opt out. Well, he wrecks our economy and busts our budget in Colorado. This is not the economic future I want for our state. Renewables. I'm for all forms of energy. I'm the only candidate in this race that's for an all-of-the-above energy policy. My opponent, he's for an all-of-the-above policy -1, and that's fossil fuels. He says he wants a Colorado where we have zero fossil fuel production. You know, the problem with that is that I was talking to a 50-year-old Coloradan yesterday, and he said, when I was born, fossil fuels represented 83% of energy production. In my 20s and 30s, when I studied as a geologist and ended up going into the energy industry, I heard fossil fuels are going to be eradicated. I heard it over and over again. He said, today fossil fuels represent 83% of our energy needs. Across the world, we have spent about $1.2 trillion on renewables, and they represent about 3% of our energy production. Think about that. The idea that we're going to go to a 100% renewable mandate, if you talk to people in the energy industry, isn't even practical. They'll tell you that if you get to a 65 or 70% renewable, using renewables, that we get a law of diminishing returns. That means that costs get passed on to you, and it costs more to heat your home and turn on the lights at night. Not more for somebody like Jared Polis, more for you. And the cost associated with that has been estimated to be $45 billion. In fact, Jared Polis, and here's the thing, Jared Polis has promised about $100 billion, 90 to 100, maybe even more. I'm using conservative estimates. I'd say about $90 to $100 billion worth of costs or spending in Colorado. Our budget today is $30 billion. $20 billion comes from all of us, in the form of income taxes or sales taxes and every other annoying fee that government levies on us, and $10 billion from the federal government. And most of the money from the federal government has been used for Medicaid expansion. So if you are unapologetically promising to triple the size of our state government and you have no way to pay for it, guess what that equals? It equals either jacking up people's income taxes, and we have Tabor as a defense mechanism against that, thank goodness. His healthcare policy alone would double people's personal income taxes. Or else you bleed it out of the business community in the form of regulations and fees. And you bleed it out of individuals in the forms of fees through the legislature. Either one makes Colorado a horrible place to live and work for future generations. And that is why Jared Polis must be stopped. He must be stopped so that we can have the future that all of us in this room want to have for our kids and grandkids. So that we can have a prosperous future where individuals can achieve their hopes and dreams without the big footprint of government on their back. And so I am asking each and every one of you to consider, first of all, making an investment in our campaign, because as somebody who has been in the private sector, somebody who has run a publicly traded real estate company and dealt with government regulations and taken that company private, I can tell you there is nothing worse than bad government. And Jared Polis represents bad government like nobody that I have ever seen before in my life. He is the embodiment of bad government. And bad government creeps up on people in the business world like a noxious weed until you start paying for things you never thought possible. And I would say to you, the momentary pain of making an investment in this all-important race for governor pales in comparison to the economic harm that Jared Polis is capable of doing to Colorado in his first term as governor. If you can't afford to donate, I urge you to talk to your neighbors and your friends and to independent Democrats and explain to them that the guy running for governor makes John Hickenlooper look like Barry Goldwater. This is not a traditional Democrat. This is a far left progressive who wants to step on the gas pedal and bankrupt Colorado with empty government promises and regulations. And I don't know about you, but that's not the Colorado I want for my kids for future generations. We're going to win this election, and we're going to win it in the mountains, in Grand Junction, down in Pueblo, on the Eastern Plains, and with the heart and soul of Coloradans pulling together and working together to make this a better state for all of us to live in. Thank you very much. I can take two questions.
Walker,
yes.
I'm a California expat, so when you're talking about bad government, I know bad government. But when I see the two platforms, I have a vision of a farmer's market. You have one stand over here, and you're selling fresh fruit and vegetables for 25 cents a carton. Polis is over here giving away free candy.
Right.
And how do you fight that? Because people are going to flock to that, even though what's best for us.
Right.
That's the worst thing for
Yeah.
us to do.
And I've said many times that I'm running against free. Free can be put on a bumper sticker. People get free. They like free food, free booze. They understand free. But most pragmatic people that go to work every day for a living, I don't care if you're an independent, a Democrat, or a Republican, recognize that there is a cost associated with having a Colorado that all of us collectively want to have. We all need to contribute to that. And we need to be fiscally responsible. Because just because we have a balanced budget in Colorado doesn't mean our budget obligations are getting more and more, are becoming more and more harder to actually fill because of automatic ratchets. And money is becoming scarce. And the old adage that you just go to the taxpayers and soak them for a tax increase, that hasn't worked in Colorado. Because of Tabor, it hasn't worked because government hasn't done a good job of explaining to people why they need more money. And that's true with transportation, it's true with education. And so, if you have somebody who's unapologetically promising to triple the size of our budget, and you can't pay for it through the ballot, you are going to pay for it through regulations and fees on the business community. He has already said that he plans to pay for his state-run health care plan through a payroll tax. Well, 2 years ago, when a Democratic governor and I toured this state, I was at the Eagle Town Hall for a very memorable healthcare debate against a holistic medicine person, alternative medicine person, who wanted state-run healthcare so her crystal healing could be covered as a healthcare expense. It also came out during the course of the debate. Somebody asked a question that she had recently been in the Vail Daily News for transporting a few too many pounds of weed in the back of her Subaru. This is the hypocritical promise that is being made here. It is, you can have this, and for free, and what ends up happening is that the Coloradans who can afford it the least pay the most. That's true with energy and renewable mandates, that people will be paying more for their electricity, more to heat their homes. It's true for education, where we will get more and more dollars outside of the classroom for administrative costs than we will get inside the classroom. And it is true for healthcare, because Congressman Polis can jump on a plane to Mexico and get a specialized procedure through his Bridge Health company for medical tourism. The rest of us, if we don't have the ability to wrap our state-run plane with a private plan, have to wait in line. And what I was going to say about his healthcare is he said that he would, during a rare moment of candor and honesty, he said he would pay for his state-run healthcare plan through a payroll tax. Well, 2 years ago, when Ritter and I defeated state-run healthcare, the payroll tax was going to be double digits. It's only gotten more expensive. So, is it 10%? Is it 15%? What is the tax that is going to be levied on businesses in Colorado? And by the way, the proposal was not just tax that are domiciled here. It was an extra tax on companies that aren't domiciled here. That causes everybody from Taco Bell to Pizza Hut to Wendy's to Merrill Lynch to CB Richard Ellis, the list goes on, to get out of Colorado, and they won't come back. And we cannot afford to have that happen. Yes?
So we have a lot of several candidates running for office in this room right now, and in a state like Colorado that's very divided, it's about getting people out to vote and knowing who won't vote. So what strategy, especially in the Hispanic community, what strategies are you putting into your campaign to get people to become likely voters in 2020?
That's a great question. As it relates to energy, Congressman Polis is trying to have Coloradans forget that just a few years ago, 3 years ago, he was willing to bankroll a 2,000-foot setback that the current Democratic governor had to plead with him to pull off the ballot. If you talk to anybody in the energy industry, they will tell you a 2,000-foot setback has the same impact as a 2,500-foot setback, and it sends small and medium-sized operators out of Colorado, and they won't be doing business here anymore. That's 230,000 collective jobs and $32 billion of annual economic impact out of Colorado. A couple weeks ago when I was in Grand Junction, I got to take a tour of a mountain bike facility, or parts production company that produces chains and brakes and other stuff for mountain bikes. And the guy who gave me the tour, I would not describe as a traditional Republican. He's an outdoorsman, and during the tour, he said to me, "Have you heard of the Palisade Plunge Project?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, it's an amazing project because it was done in collaboration with the energy industry. We are building some mountain biking trails in Palisade that will rival Moab, Utah." And I said, "That's awesome." I said, how did you end up doing it?" He said, "Because we realized that the rubber on these tires and the carbon on this bike frame wouldn't be possible without a functioning energy industry. We also realize that we can achieve more working together collaboratively than we can ever achieve battling each other as enemies. And that spirit of collaboration should be everywhere in Colorado, because we also recognize that people who are in the energy industry love the outdoors. And we believe we can have a responsible, accountable energy industry, and we must for Colorado's future, but we can also have an awesome outdoor recreation industry at the same time. And that's absolutely the case. But if Congressman Polis has his way, we will drive 230,000 jobs from the energy industry out of Colorado and a $32 billion annual economic impact out of our state. And we can't afford to have that happen either. And so this is just another example of a radical extreme candidate. And your point about Latinos represent 100,000 jobs in the energy industry, collective jobs in trucking, in financial services. I've told the story. I have a friend in the energy industry who's a U.S. citizen from Mexico. He's been here about a little over 10 years. Bought his first house a couple years ago. The energy industry has transformed his life. And Congressman Polis is working against him because he is working to make his job obsolete. He is working on renewable mandates that would put him out of a job, and he has nothing to say to him